Put you in my pocket. Push the button through the hole to lock it. Hold on to you, you're like a treasure. Walk across my hand, it'd be a pleasure. You could come with me. You could come with me. Oh, you're such a sweet little misfit. When your smile falls down, I wanna lift it. Wanna make you better. Wanna run away together.
Welcome to Delicious of History, where we talk about cool people you probably didn't learn about in school. I'm your co-host and resident history enthusiast, Vega.
And I am also your co-host and resident dirty anarchist, Issa.
We love a dirty anarchist. That's
Yeah.
actually sort of an interesting way to go for today. So when I was driving over here, I was trying to think of what would be like my quintessential Philly experience, because the person we're talking about today is a Philly guy.
Awesome.
And so I was thinking, what is the thing that has happened to me that is the most Philly? And I immediately forgot anything that has ever happened to me in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But what I ended up coming up with was those like really lovely moments that people from outside Philly don't really think about.
Yeah.
So like the time that someone was coming to my house who had low vision, and a random teenager in my neighborhood noticed and helped him come, asked him what address he was looking for, and led him up to my door.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have tons of stuff like that down here in South Philly too.
The first thing I thought of, which was my most Philly moment, was when I had to evacuate my house because my roommate threatened to kill me because he was scared of the bed bugs. Oh, fleas. The fleas. That's what they were.
I mean, they're both pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is that I told this story at a slam, a story slam, and the host said, wow, that is the most West Philly story I've ever heard in my life. And again, that's a story for another time. But I also have a very deep love of Philadelphia, and I do have mostly good things to say about it.
It's actually an interesting transition because while Philly can have all these lovely, like, warm things, and I think sometimes I get a little defensive, but Philly also is a little bonkers. People tend to think about the time Phillies fans threw snowballs at Santa Claus when he put out the first pitch.
I feel like he probably deserved it, though.
I'm sure he did something to deserve it.
I mean, come on.
Or like when Philadelphia kind of tore itself apart because we won the big football game.
It's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's exciting. Sometimes you just gotta get rumbly, you know?
Yeah. So when I think about this guy, I said he's very Philly, and I thought, like, what do I mean by that? And I think that's part of I'm going to explore is like, why do I read about this guy and go,
it's a gritty charm.
Philly.
Yeah.
So his name's Sam Byck.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and like spoil the ending.
Oh my goodness.
Because I think it's important to keep in mind the whole story with him. So the thing that he is known for, if he's known for anything, is in 1974, he tried to hijack an airplane to fly into the White House to kill Richard Nixon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had big dreams. Obviously, that was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But it's weird because you'd think this would be something people would have heard of.
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't unless they are enthusiasts of Stephen Sondheim's musical Assassins. Assassins,
yeah.
Yes. He is a prominent character in that. They say his name wrong in it, unfortunately, but that's okay.
I have not listened to Assassins, but I will say for the listeners, I have probably heard more about Assassins than makes up the runtime of Assassins.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sure you have. The mutual human in our life is this partner who is a big Stephen Sondheim fan.
A big Assassins fan.
Yes.
Also.
Yes. I went and saw Assassins with him once, and I was like, that was amazing!
Yes.
And he was like, I mean, it was good, but I have some notes.
Oh my goodness. He said, I was like, would it be your dream to like run a play of Assassins, like to direct it? And he was like, yes, wait, no, because I would get way too into it, and then I would be the worst director ever, and then like 2 seconds after it started producing, I'd be like, this is all wrong.
Like, change it all up.
Change it all.
Throw it away.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's good to know yourself.
I think so.
And I think it was part of Sam Byck's issues. I don't know that he knew himself.
Yeah.
So Sam Byck, he was the child of poor Russian Jewish parents in South Philly. South Philly was where a lot of Russian Jews ended up when they first came to the United States and settled in Philadelphia. There was this idea that the Philadelphia port was easier to get into than Ellis Island. True, not. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that's the story. So, ended up in South Philly, but eventually graduated from Olney High School, which is up north. So, obviously they moved. There were a lot of German Jewish community up there. I don't know, but he graduated from Olney High School in 1948. And I thought I wrote this down. I guess I didn't. He was, when people asked about how he was in high school, people said he was charming, but had a temper. Which, those things go together sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I did this. Considered funny and charming, but had a terrible temper. I did write it down. Look at that. Good job, Past Vega. So he had a lot of financial struggles. He had a family, wife, kids, and in 1968 especially had a lot of financial difficulties. And he wanted to open a mobile tire sales shop. Okay. So, like, I guess the tire shop comes to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ingenious.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I feel like he was ahead of his time because
I think so.
That sounds like a disruptive, I'm putting scare quotes around that.
Why
disruptive industry.
don't we have that now? It feels like if you have a flat tire or you need a new tire, it would be hard to get to the tires.
Yeah. I would call this business, be like, hey, especially because I just don't want to, like, leave my house.
Right.
The pandemic really did that to me. I'm like, oh, somebody can come do literally anything.
I feel like tire delivery, that's an untapped market.
I mean, there's people who will come and change your windshield.
So then why not tires? It feels like that would be the more important thing.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to have someone change my windshield just on on my street.
Yeah.
But they couldn't because, like, I don't know, there was something fancy about it. It's
Ooh.
like my wife's car, and it has
Ooh.
bells and whistles. So
Ooh.
we ended up having to take it to the shop. But the idea was there. I appreciated that someone came to personally tell me they couldn't do it.
Aw.
So he thinks this is a great idea. There's a movie about this guy where Sean Penn plays him, which is it's not a very good movie, but Sean Penn's great. And they insinuate he was wanting to sell tires in what we would nowadays call underserved communities. So these were like black neighborhoods and brown neighborhoods.
All right.
I don't know if that is true
Okay.
or something the movie did to try to humanize him.
So the movie made it so he wasn't like distributing them for free.
No, but there was this idea, I guess, that they were insinuating in the movie that there were like tire deserts, I guess.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And they were insinuating that he was just like a really cared about
All right.
equity. And honestly, I can't say either way. There's not a lot of information about this guy out
Yeah.
there. And the information I have isn't spectacular, to be quite honest. It's not like with some people where I can find like a really well-researched biography or something. That I was not successful in finding. If anybody knows one, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
So he wants to open his mobile tire sales shop, so he applies for a $20,000 Small Business Association. That's the right word, right? SBA loan.
Yeah.
It's an SBA loan, whatever
Yeah.
that is. And he had some friends who also ran a tire shop named Frankie Jones,
Okay.
who was like his one friend. He was like one of those guys.
Okay.
And in 1969, Richard Nixon becomes president, which Sam Byck voted for him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting move.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting move for anybody.
Yep, it is.
Granted, in retrospect, we have the benefit of hindsight.
We
but
do.
Also,
We do. I also do not know at all anything about Nixon's presidency other than it was complicated.
that's one way to put it.
I know. And this is gonna, sound weird, but he did a couple good things.
Well, sure.
I wonder if Sam Byck was like, maybe he'll do those good things and not all those bad things that he keeps doing also, because he also did a lot of bad things.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I on the whole, I'm
Very
not
bad.
a Richard Nixon fan.
I am not a fan. I did have a friend in high school who was a really big Richard Nixon fan, which was weird. And we
You can't see this because this is an audio medium, but I just gave a look of full disbelief.
It was weird. It was weird. She's grown out of it. She's moved past it.
I mean, I donated money to Ron Paul.
Sure, okay.
So we all have those moments.
Man, yeah.
I would take it back.
Yeah. There's what's his name? The steampunk guy who like helps Trump out sometimes, and he has weird sunglasses.
Trump has a steampunk guy?
He's like a top hat and the sunglasses.
What?
You know what I mean? He does not look steampunk. I'm saying that he's steampunk.
If I Google steampunk Trump,
oh no, you'll probably
up?
find something much worse.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that then.
Or better. This is a bad guy. it's I actually wonder what does come up.
Okay, now we have to do it.
Oh yeah, we definitely need to do
Okay.
it.
This is awkward.
Steampunk Trump. Let's see.
Google's like steampunk. Oh God, what is happening here?
Oh, I don't know.
Ever wonder what steampunk Donald Trump might look like?
No.
This is one of these like weird.
It looks weird. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a weird look.
It's like he's wearing like goggles.
His hair's all like sticking up.
You know, his hair looks like the former British Prime Minister
Boris Johnson.
Yeah, that's very Boris Johnson hair.
It's very Boris Johnson. Was this an AI?
Yeah, this is an AI.
Great.
Thing.
This is what AI is for, because I would hate it for someone to actually put in the hours to actually draw this and like think it up. But I love the fact that we can, make it happen.
Yeah, I like this one. He has two noses.
Oh yeah.
Sort of interesting. I do worry about these AIs becoming too good because, like, I have friends who are artists who make money selling their art online. But for the moment, while it's providing a two-nose Trump.
Steampunk Trump.
Steampunk two-nose Trump. And also his suit is, like, has gears on it.
Yeah.
It's a look.
It's a look. It's a look. It goes together more than I thought it would, if
it
that
really
makes sense.
Does.
Like, it's more cohesive. It's more cohesive of an aesthetic than I expected it to be.
So, anyway.
Do you think Sam Byck was into steampunk?
I
think he's a mechanic.
Right.
He flies planes. Or
Well-
he tries to fly planes. He, goes against the grain. He's a little unlikable.
Hey, steampunk fans, tweet at us.
I will say this as a person who had a steampunk phase. Not one that I put any effort into, but one that was a passing interest. I am now thoroughly past the steampunk phase. But
It's cool. I like the aesthetic.
I like the aesthetic.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I obviously, like, it's hard to take a person out of their era.
Yeah.
I don't think he would hate it.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to, like, my image of him is so, because the sort of information I have is so, like, rooted in media. I'm trying to, like, separate him from, like, Stephen Sondheim and Sean Penn.
Yes.
And I just, like, I'm struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense. As if you couldn't tell, dear listeners, what the conceit of this podcast
Sure.
is? Fega tells me things about historical characters, and I react to them. And
Issa knows things, too.
I know some things, but
Like, a lot of things.
but not about Sam Byck.
No, you
No.
know about, like, ornamental spice boxes.
I do. I know about ornamental spice boxes. I don't know how much that is, how big a part of.
Well, he's a Jew.
He is. He is. He's
Don't
a
get
Jew.
the feeling he's very religious.
I didn't get that feeling either.
Yeah.
But so Sam Byck is new to me, but very well known to Fega, which is why.
Yeah, we go way back. I learned about Sam Byck when I was in high school because there is a documentary, which is where most of the, like, and then this happened, and then this happened, came from for these notes. Because when, back when I was in high school, a million years ago, the History Channel still had history on it.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, it was like all the documentaries were basically like Hitler or History of the Spoon.
Okay.
But one time it was Sam Byck. Mm-hmm. And so we go way back. So 1969, Sam Byck votes for Richard Nixon. He becomes president. And the SBA, unsurprisingly, is taking its sweet time to get back to Sam. Any of us who have had to deal with government agencies know that it is a universally frustrating experience.
Yes.
So that's not surprising. And at that time, he is diagnosed with what at that time was known as manic depression,
Okay.
which we now call bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And he checks himself into Friends Hospital.
Okay.
And I want to take a pause at this moment because I think this is important because of Sam Byck's particular story. Like I said, this is part of why I said, like, he tried to kill Richard Nixon.
Right.
Which is an inherently violent act. But I
Sure.
wanted to note that, like, most people with mental illness are more likely to be the victims
Yes.
of violence than the perpetrators.
Yes.
And I have numbers even.
Love
that-
numbers.
For those with a major mental disorder, the population attributable risk was 4.3%, indicating that violence in the community could be reduced by less than 5% if a major mental disorders could be eliminated. So basically that just means that if we could just wave a wand and get rid of mental illness, which if anyone can do that,
Yeah.
please.
Go for
it. The general violence in society would only go down by 5%.
That is a very interesting statistic.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Sam Byck did a violent thing. Not necessarily something you could expect
Yeah.
from other people with a similar diagnosis as him.
But I'm sure that's probably played up in the way people tell about him.
100%, which is
Yeah.
why I wanted to take this little sidebar.
Yeah.
Because it also is part of his story. Because he goes to Friends Hospital, and while he's there, he is rejected for his business loan.
Oh.
And, you know, this is one of those things, too. I don't know about SBA loans, but I know about, like, applying for disability and things like that. Because I have people in my life who have had to do that. And you're going to get rejected the first time. Like, that's just literally what happens. And I don't know if it's the same with SBA loans, but
Sure.
when I was reading this, my first thought was, just apply again, dude. Like,
Yeah. I feel like for a lot of people, I was talking with somebody today, it was just like, if you haven't had to apply for things before, or like if you're just not familiar with the process, that's like the worst part for like applying for funds in general, is like just not knowing what it's like. That really sucks. I can imagine for a lot of people, it's like you apply and you get rejected and it's like, well, that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's usually not, especially
Yeah.
as regards the
Yeah.
federal government. But
Yeah.
that was certainly his takeaway.
Yeah.
Wow, I wrote a bunch of stuff about mental health stuff. Okay, so that happens, and he is feeling not great about Richard Nixon and the United States government in general.
What were they doing at the time?
The government? Or,
Yeah.
I don't know, Nixon stuff? I don't know. What year is it? It's like going to China. Okay. So this is the late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
My brain.
Oh,
He's doing
brains.
Richard Nixon things, which are probably terrible. Richard Nixon
Tends to
timeline.
suck.
He is not my favorite president. Not as bad as Polk, but getting there. Richard Nixon, I don't think enacted a genocide like Polk did, but I could be wrong on that, actually.
Yeah.
This is from the Nixon Foundation, so I'm always big on understanding your sources. So these are people who I guess stan Richard Nixon
Sure.
in the modern parlance.
Sure.
He was doing quote unquote welfare reform
Okay.
and returning greater authority to state and local governments. So to me, that sounds like defunding programs.
Yeah. I don't know. That could mean a lot of things.
That's true.
They could have put a little bit more detail in this.
Which is why I think it was probably bad.
Right. It probably was bad. It was probably bad. I'm going to say when it comes to Nixon, usually pretty bad.
Although it says down here that he passed a bunch of environmental initiatives, like
Yeah,
the Clean
he
Air
did.
and Clean Water Act. Look
He
at
did.
that.
Yeah, that was him, which is weird. And it's this again, this is somebody I know very little about. What I do know is that he expanded funding for the NEA, the National
National Endowment for the
Endowment
Arts.
for the Arts. He expanded that, and he expanded the Environment Policy Act, but he also was the worst in so many other ways.
Yeah, I mean, Clean Water Act we're a big fan of here in Philly because the Schuylkill was disgusting.
Yeah.
And now it is a place that people will go in boats in.
Yeah.
I won't, but
My
won't.
friends are doing that today.
you know what? I'm glad people are enjoying themselves.
I'm glad they're glad for the confidence.
I don't have that level of confidence in Schuylkill River. Maybe that's un-American of me.
I think it'll be fun. Yeah, but yeah, Nixon, super racist.
Did you know he was raised a Quaker?
Yes, and I have a fun fact.
Yeah?
In the JFK-Nixon election, Haverford College, which is historically was a Quaker school, voted overwhelmingly for JFK. And the nearby Catholic school, Villanova, voted overwhelmingly for the Quaker, Richard Nixon. Hey, went both ways.
Is there like a Quaker version of excommunication? Actually, I know the answer to that, and it's yes.
Oh, is there?
Wait,
it's separation.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
at least back in the old days,
Yeah.
like in the 18th century,
Yeah.
you could get read out of meeting. I don't know if they still do that.
At Haverford, you got separated, which I guess is kind of like being shunned. And that's how I'm thinking of it now that I look back. Now that I think back to it, because no one ever really gets kicked out of Haverford unless you like murder someone in the middle of the green. But probably even not that.
But if you murder someone privately, that's okay?
Probably, yeah. But you got separated from the school, and then eventually you could come back to the community.
I mean, to be fair, as a pair of Jews here,
Yeah.
we are kind of known for being like, there's very little you can do to not be Jewish anymore.
Sure.
And even then, some like Chabadnik will probably walk up to you on the street and ask you to lay tefillin.
They'll make sure you are Jewish.
Yeah, they're like, listen, is your mom Jewish? Okay, so Richard Nixon doing Nixon-y things.
Yeah.
Sam Byck was experiencing a lot of economic stress. So let's kind of break this down. So
Sure.
he applies for this loan. He is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he gets rejected for the loan, does leave the hospital. He loses his family. They do not stay with him through his mental health struggles. And he's living off of, I believe, disability. And that's just not a fun time.
Yeah.
And in 1972, which is the same year his wife and children leave, Watergate happens.
Oh, wow.
The Watergate break-in. So this is the moment that a lot of people were like, maybe not so much with this Richard Nixon guy. And Byck is just fully on the no Nixon train now. He's
Sure.
just like, absolutely not. He's, Richard Nixon personally is the reason he didn't get his SBA loan as far as Sam Byck is concerned.
Okay.
And is probably why his wife left him. Like, just fully putting all the blame on Richard Nixon. And doing this very loudly because he's a Philly guy. Remember when we started this, he's a Philly guy? So he's, like, going to bars and, like, talking about how somebody ought to shoot Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
And that gets the attention of Secret Service.
Okay.
As you might imagine, somebody
Yeah.
called in an anonymous tip. And Secret Service interviewed him, like they do, and they just decided that he was just a lot of talk.
Okay.
Basically, like, all bark, no bite,
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Philly people, if we think something needs to be changed, we do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen, like, when there's potholes, people will, like, stick things in them.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, when I think of Philly, the ethos of Philly, it's like, we know the city's not going to do anything, so we do it.
Right.
And so he's got that ethos in him. So he starts driving down to Washington, D.C. during the oil embargo.
Okay.
So this is when a time when it was very difficult to get gas.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was driving to D.C. and trying to scope out security at the inauguration, also to protest in front of the White House.
Sure.
Now, here's the thing about protesting in front of the White House. You actually can't do that without a permit.
Oh.
Yes, this is always. I used to be a tour guide in Washington, D.C. I took, if anybody has done like those 8th grade trip where, they a school from like Ohio just loads up their entire 8th grade class into motor coaches and sends them to the nation's capital. I'm the person that would meet them in D.C. and show them
Our great nation.
our great nation. It's an interesting gig. And, yeah, so you can't actually protest without a permit. Now, it's not a big deal to get a permit.
Okay.
I don't know about then, but today you fill out a piece of paper, you turn it in. I've had these permits for groups to like sing in front of the Lincoln Memorial and things
Okay.
like that. Like it's
It's not hard to
No, but it
Okay.
is an extra step.
It is an extra step, and it does feel like
It doesn't feel great.
it's not great. It feels like it's kind of defeating the purpose of a lot of protests.
Yeah. So he gets arrested in front of the White House several times, and he has the best protest signs. Like, I had to write it down.
Okay.
Because I will never remember this. So it's impeach Nixon now before inflation drives the cost of impeachment sky high. Had enough inflation? Impeach the inflator.
Ah.
So, you see like protest signs like online, or they're usually like kind of quippy.
Yeah.
Not Byck.
No.
And then
Detail.
Yeah.
Levels.
There's nuance.
A story.
He's like handing out, here's a Wikipedia article
Yeah.
about inflation and why it's Richard Nixon's fault. He also, at one point, dressed as Santa on Christmas Eve.
Great look.
Yeah, he dressed as Santa, and he held up a sign that said, "All I want for Christmas is my constitutional rights to peaceably petition my government for a redress of grievances."
Fair enough.
Yes.
Did anyone throw snowballs at him?
No, and he was also not arrested.
Oh, because you can't arrest Santa.
No. They were
Yeah.
like, oh, it's Santa? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. That's awesome, though.
And so Byck's doing this. Something we forget as people who didn't live through Watergate is that Watergate took forever. Like, we think of it now as like they caught the guys rooting through the Watergate hotel room, and then Richard Nixon was out like a month later.
Yeah.
And that is not how it happened.
Right.
It was a really slow... I mean, it was politics. It was exactly what you'd expect.
It also feels bizarre to look back on Watergate in this era where Trump has done like similar and worse crimes in full sight and nothing happens.
Yes. And I listened to a podcast.
It's hard.
About
It's just
it.
like it's hard to think that was like I'm like they cared about that. Like
Yeah.
we can do worse than that.
And to be fair, it took a little while for some of the Republicans to come around to being to speaking out against Nixon.
Sure.
But they did. They eventually came around.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the difference.
Yeah.
So during this time, Archibald Cox was fired by Richard Nixon on October 20th, 1973. And so this is like he fired the guy who was running the investigation.
As you do.
Yeah.
I get a very Trump move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some parallels there.
Sure.
So I think it's important to note because this is also opinions are turning against Nixon, and Nixon is still and will remain the height of Byck's ire. Also during this time, Byck sues the United States government with the help of the ACLU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they basically are saying that they're calling into question this idea that it isn't legal to have to require a permit
Okay.
to protest.
Right.
Which is an interesting legal question. Because there is something to be said for, can you imagine what Washington, D.C. would be like if you didn't need a permit? And it doesn't feel very like free speech to have to apply for a permit. So I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a bummer we didn't actually get to have that discussion.
That's a major bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see some lawyers hash that out.
I do too.
So
I think I know what side I'd be on.
Yeah, yeah.
Still would be interested in hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, like I think I'm on the in favor of the no permit.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also I have been there in Washington D.C. with some very aggressive protesters, so
Sure.
I feel that.
Yeah.
So he was written about in the Enquirer.
Okay.
For this. This is where I got a lot of my information about him, just sort of a feel for who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about his experience being arrested, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, he's a funny dude.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he's so honored, but by the number of people they felt like they needed to bring to arrest him. And in post, I'm going to go find that quote because it's a very good quote.
Oh, good.
Because I cannot find it right now. Friends, I found the quote. It was literally in front of my face the entire time. Then he says, I was arrested by 5 cops and 3 Secret Servicemen. They had 3 squad cars for me. I had my choice of squad cars. You would have thought the White House was under siege. Frankly, I was sort of flattered. So he's suing the United States government, and so that's one of the ways we know about Sam Byck's sort of inner life, what leads up to his final act. And the other way we know is he would take tapes of himself, like he would just talk into a tape recorder. And he took a ton of tapes of himself, and he also addressed them to various famous people. He has a bunch of these. And in February of 1974, he gets his car drivable, and he steals a 22 from Frankie Jones, remember his one friend?
Oh, yeah.
And starts driving to Baltimore Washington Airport, stopping periodically for gas, just $1 at a time, because this is still during the oil embargo.
Yeah.
So this was when people were like waiting in line for gas and things like that.
Yeah.
4:45 a.m., he mails the tapes to various famous people with a return address to Dan Lynch. Dan Lynch is the person who wrote the Inquirer article about him. And I looked it up. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. I was like, I want to talk to this guy who actually met Sam Byck. But unfortunately, he's no longer with us.
Wow.
And Sam Byck's hope in doing this is that the celebrities will hear his message and spread the word. His message being, I guess, Richard Nixon's terrible and inflation is bad. So there we are. So 6:50 a.m., Sam Byck enters the Baltimore Washington Airport. Now this is a very different time from now. So you didn't have security, like we do today. But there was some security. Like there were cops around.
Okay.
And there was a metal detector at the gate.
Okay.
But you had to walk through it like, imagine when you're getting on an airplane. And you're getting onto the jetway where they like scan your pass.
Yeah.
That's where the metal detector was.
Okay.
So he goes to Delta 523 because the gate is close to the entrance.
Okay.
He meets Neil Ramsberg, who was the police officer on duty at the checkpoint. Sam Byck apparently didn't think about this whole metal detector situation and realized that this was going to be a problem. So his solution is to shoot Ramsberg.
Oh.
And unfortunately, Ramsberg, I don't believe, made it.
Oh, wow. Oh, so
Yeah.
he did shoot.
He shoot Ramsberg.
Okay.
Runs onto the plane.
Okay.
Charles Troyer is the first policeman on the scene, and he takes his .25, I don't know how to talk about guns, Magnum off of Ramsberg.
Millimeters.
A superior gun. He takes a superior gun off of Ramsberg.
Bigger gun.
He, goes to try to stop Sam Byck. And, of course, they don't know exactly what's going on, but this is a time when there was a lot of airplane hijackings.
Okay.
So while it was a serious thing, it was also kind of
fairly routine.
But usually it happened in the air. It didn't usually happen on the ground. Sam Byck was actually running into some issues as well on the plane because he realized he didn't really have a plan for getting the plane off the ground.
Yeah. Wait. So, okay. Was his initial plan? His initial plan was to, I'm assuming, wait until it was in the air.
I believe so.
Okay.
I might have that wrong, but certainly he did not envision himself being the one to fly the plane.
Right.
He wanted the pilots to fly the plane.
Yeah.
And told them to do that, and they did not.
No.
They did not.
No,
in fact, do that.
I'm not flying this plane at gunpoint.
And then he shoots both of them and realizes that that's not going to work particularly well for getting the plane off the ground.
He doesn't know how to fly.
He does not know how to fly a plane. And he has the flight attendant close the door of the plane.
Okay.
But she doesn't.
Okay.
She pretends it's too heavy for him. So she uses misogyny to her favor and is like, oh no, I can't get the door shut.
Yeah.
I want to see if I had her name. Cynthia Stovall. So Cynthia Stovall was the flight attendant on that flight. And she went to, quote-unquote, help in first class and used that time to communicate to police and so forth. There are now police outside the plane as well. And this is an interesting thing of now, if something like this were to happen, I feel like we have police that are specifically trained to handle things that happen on the tarmac. These police didn't have that training, and so they tried to shoot out the tires of the plane. Which you can't do. They're steel. Like, they're not like your car tires. You can't, like, slash the tires of a plane.
Yeah.
So that didn't do anything.
Okay.
So they're doing that. They're mucking around with that. We've got Charles Troyer still, like, in the jet bridge kind of area. And both pilots are shot. The pilots call on the radio for another pilot. And their whole thing at this point is to keep the plane on the ground.
Yeah. Which just probably wasn't that much of a concern little did they know.
Well, they didn't really know, right?
Right.
And also during this time, Cynthia Stovall is focusing on saving the lives of the 10 people who were on the plane.
Yeah,
At the time.
for sure.
So she gets a bunch of people off the plane, and then there's 10 people who are in first class, and so they can't get off the plane because he could see first class.
Oh, not first class anymore.
I know, right?
Wow.
Like, well, Hoi Polloi got off the plane. But she gets the coach passengers onto the wings. I'm sorry, my numbers are all messed up. We're going to backtrack.
Bleep, bloop, bloop, bloop.
Bloop, bloop. There were 10 people on the plane. 8 of them were coach.
Okay.
She gets them out onto the wings of the plane, she being the flight attendant, Cynthia Stovall. But then the 2 people who are in first class are trapped there.
Oh, wow.
And that's when Troyer takes what he, I believe, described as a hell of a shot. And he shoots through the double pane plexiglass window. So, like, the plane doors have that little circular window dealie.
Yeah.
He shot through that and hit Sam Byck. Doesn't kill him, but
Okay.
it incapacitates him.
Okay.
And then Sam Byck then dies by suicide
Okay.
subsequently.
Okay.
And his last words were, "Help me."
Oh.
So I should have said this beginning, there was a bomb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That too.
there was a bomb.
Yeah.
They
Another
take care of
layer.
the bomb situation.
Good.
And Sam Byck is no more.
No more.
And also, the people who died in this were Neil Ramsberg, who I mentioned, the police officer who was at the gate, and one of the pilots, Fred Jones,
Okay.
dies. The
other
other
one
pilot survives.
Oh, man.
Sam Byck is actually buried just outside Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Actually, just around the corner from a place I used to work. I had no idea when I worked there. I looked it up and was like, oh, well, look at that. In the aftermath of this, he was not talked about a lot, like even at the time. The news didn't talk about his motives. Sometimes they didn't even mention his name.
Interesting.
So quite the opposite of what he had hoped with
Yeah.
all of his tapes and so
Sure.
forth. And he's mostly gone down in history as this crazy person because he did have this really grand scheme
Yeah.
that comes off as, not entirely in grips with reality.
Sure.
But I think that's a little bit unfair
Yeah.
because he was indeed had some he didn't have a great grip on reality. That is true. However, he also wasn't being served by society, right? So this was a guy. Hi, Pikachu. Pikachu's a cat, and Pikachu just decided that it is time for me to
time.
pay attention
Yeah.
to Pikachu. Hi. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
So he wasn't being supported by society, right? This was a person
Sure.
who was mentally ill, and he was not receiving the sorts of supports that might have had any chance of helping him get better.
Yeah.
That said, he received more than a lot of people do today.
Yeah.
He got $189 a month
Yeah.
on disability. He had a place to live.
Yeah.
Still not enough and still depressing and was not helping his mental health,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of that was also stigma
Yeah.
around mental health. But a lot of those programs that kept him alive aren't really around anymore.
Yeah.
And imagine if we'd expanded those programs instead
Yeah.
of getting rid of them. Nonetheless, that is what happens. He's not really taken seriously in life or in death. And even as much as I love Stephen Sondheim's show, he spends the entire time in his Santa outfit.
Oh, wow.
So there's a very comedic element
Interesting.
to it.
Interesting.
And really, he probably would have been relegated to even more of a D-lister than he is now if somebody else hadn't decided to fly an airplane into a building.
Right.
So
Right.
September 11th happens, and all of a sudden, people remember Sam Byck.
Yeah.
And this is actually where we get the History Channel documentary that I saw
Yeah.
as a kid. I believe it came out in 2003. Sondheim's Assassins is revived. So it had come out, it was off Broadway in the 1990s. And in 2004, it's brought to Broadway with Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah, Neil Patrick Harris plays the balladeer.
Oh. Oh, he must have been great.
Yes, he was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see it.
Right.
I saw it bootleg on YouTube. And, taken from someone's, phone or something
Sure.
in 2004. So
Oof. Yeah.
they start looking at Byck as more of a sort of ill-treated, forgotten loser.
Interesting.
To return to sort of my original question of, this guy just strikes me as so Philly.
He is very Philly. He is very Philly. This is a very Philly thing to do in general, is to be Santa and do gritty things in a Santa suit and all of those things. I also, and like, to be clear, like, neither of us, support violence in that way, perhaps.
I'm against killing people.
I'm against killing people.
Like,
It's actually, it's a part of our...
Even Richard Nixon.
Yeah. I'm generally against killing people. So not really, like, supporting his
end
choices and his, But it is really interesting to think about how we brush him off, because that was, like, what drove him to do it in the first place. It's not going to make these things any better if we just brush off people that feel like they're not being listened to.
Yeah, and he did something really big.
Yeah.
So we notice him.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were a ton of people like him who just sort of wasted away because we weren't taking care of them as a society. And I what I really like about Sam Byck is that he's kind of a go-getter.
He gets the job done. Well,
yeah. I mean, he sees a problem and he wants to fix it, but he doesn't know how to do it.
Sure.
And this is as somebody who has spent time educating people in the political process and history and stuff like that, is something I'm passionate about, is making all this stuff accessible to people.
Yeah.
So that they know what they can do besides trying to hijack an airplane.
Yeah.
And would he have been happy just visiting his rep? Who knows? But what he tried certainly did not work.
Yeah.
It had Richard Nixon didn't even know that all this drama was going down. I'm sure he found out later. But yeah, that's my story.
Wow.
With
Thank
Sam
you
Byck.
for telling me.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to know about him now. Oh, a little bit sad,
Yeah.
but also
it's
good to remember people
yes.
that want to be remembered.
That, and also I think it's important to, I think with people like Sam Byck, you got to come from a place of, this is, the thing he did was bad. Okay, we all understand that. So then moving past that, what else can we learn about what happened with Sam Byck?
And also, if you're going to choose a president, Nixon's pretty far down.
Yeah.
They're on the list.
Not a fave.
Not a fave.
Generally.
Yeah. I have a couple worse ones.
Yeah.
On my list of, from would assassin, if I was that type of person, to, would not assassin.
Yeah. But people I miss more than others.
Yeah, I would say that. Jackson.
Yeah, no. And Polk. Nope.
No.
No, thank you.
No, thank
Nope.
you. No, thank you. Yeah.
People ask me who my least favorite president is, and I'll be like, well, it's a little hard to judge.
Yeah.
But it's Polk.
It's Polk. People forget, I think it's because of his name. He's probably forgotten, and I'm not really sure what all the bad things he did was.
He did a genocide.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Polk was instrumental in the push west.
Got it.
And a lot of that, like, Manifest Destiny and all that.
It's interesting that we don't really study him that hard.
No, we play Oregon Trail.
Oh my
God. And go, cool, that was fun.
Yeah.
Never mind the actual active genocide that was happening behind the game.
Sure.
So with that uplifting thing, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Say bye, Pikachu. Meow.
Thank you so much for listening to D-Listers of History. If you enjoyed yourself, be sure to subscribe and drop us a review on whatever platform you listen on. A huge thank you to April Keys for the use of the song Misfit from her album Mountain View. You can find her on all the social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and sometimes TikTok at D-Listers of History, no hyphens. A big shout out to the folks supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support us and get access to all sorts of exclusive content, become a patron of this program. All of this and more can be found on our website, dlistersofhistory.com. Again, no hyphens, just smush that sucker together like a German compound word. And now for an episode-relevant audio drop.
Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. Am I mad? I doubt it. I look at the world around me, and I see after tens and thousands of years, men are still killing each other. I think maybe the world is mad. I think maybe the world has gone mad.